glass threepeats over the slow Super Bowl weekend as the New England Patriots are in their third straight Super Bowl. The upside plays the part of the Buffalo Bills coming in second place for the third straight weekend, and Serenity runs the fastest 40-yard dash time out of the top 10. All this and more on this episode of The Weekend Take.
You're listening to The Weekend Take, and now your host, Sean Schaefer.
Hello everyone and welcome to The Weekend Take. I'm your host Sean Schaefer, and with me this week is actor, director, and founder of the Midnight Film Festival, Freya Lind. How are you doing this week, Freya?
I am fantastic. Glad that today is a day where I get to take a little bit of a break and talk to you. So it's been a long week, but I am glad that I'm here.
Well, we're glad to have you here. And for those of you new to the show, what The Weekend Take is, it's a weekly episodic podcast that breaks down the weekend box office, but looks beyond the numbers at the current topics, talking points, and trends of the film industry. So as with every episode, we start with the movies that have left the top 10. This week, there were two such instances. The first of which was Serenity from Avaron, which dropped from the number 8 position down to number 14, taking in $1.7 million, a 61.5% drop from last week. Its theater count stayed the same at 2,561, a per-screen average of $664 per screen for a cum of $7.5 million. The other film that left the top 10 was Dragon Ball Super Broly from Funimation Studios, which neglected to even report numbers this week, which leads me to believe that it probably dropped to a low enough number of theaters that wasn't worth reporting. But that film has more than made its money back for Funimation. At last reporting, it was up over $30 million, making it the third highest grossing domestic release for an anime of all time, behind the first two Pokemon movies. Are you surprised to see either of these two films leave? Or I know when we were talking, you had to look up Serenity, which is...
At first, I was embarrassed that I had to look up Serenity, but then when I saw some of the reviews and what you had told me about the film itself and that it wasn't doing so well, even though it had these huge name actors attached to it, I went, oh, okay, I guess it's not so bad that I had to look up Serenity. What a shame. You know, that kind of stinks, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I mean, when you have talent at the level of Matthew McConaughey, Anne Hathaway, and Diane Lane in the film, just attaching those names to a film typically should be enough to get you a really nice box office return, but such is not the case with this film.
No, I wrote bombed next to it on my little list of things we're talking about today to remind myself exactly what it was. So, but I don't know if I'm surprised or if it's just the way things are in terms of Broly. I'm a big anime fan. We talked about how we're both anime fans. So something like Dragon Ball Super is really exciting for me to go and see. But I think, you know, just after a certain amount of time, certain films will drop. And as you said, if they didn't report any numbers, they mustn't have lost a terrible amount. So kudos to them.
Us both being anime fans, I really do hope that this opens the door for future, non-limited, non-select city releases for animes.
Yes, I hope that people now see that they can do well, because I had even asked you, because I happen to go to some of the smaller movie theaters around my house just because I like them, and I had asked you, is it select theaters? And when you had told me no, I thought that was very interesting, and I agree. I hope that this does open the door for other anime films as well.
I still keep my fingers crossed that someday we will get a live action Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Me too.
Though I think Pacific Rim probably killed the whole giant mecha thing for it, but one can dream.
We can still have hope.
Number 10.
Getting into our top 10 this week, starting at the number 10 position is the first of our new releases, though our number 10 entry isn't particularly new, but it is expanded for this weekend. They Shall Not Grow Old from Warner Brothers took in $2.4 million on 735 screens, a per theater average of just over $3,200, and it's brought its cum up to $10.7 million. For those of you that don't know, They Shall Not Grow Old was a documentary film where Peter Jackson took recovered footage from World War I, restored it, brought it to the proper frame rate, and colored it to bring it to audiences now nearly a century following World War I, just to see what the lives were like for these soldiers who gave their lives for our country's freedom. It really gives an interesting perspective on what life was like, not only for them 100 years ago, but for us as a society as a whole. Freya, have you had an opportunity to, I know it's 735 screens, so it's not a huge release, but have you had an opportunity to check this out, or does it interest you at all? Or?
No, because I want to bring my grandpa. So we're waiting on a good time for him. My grandpa's going to be 94 next week, and he probably has more energy than I do. So we're making it a birthday adventure. We have relatives on my grandfather's side and my grandmother's side who, of course, fought in World War One, and we have some medals of theirs, and we have actually really fantastic documentation of a great grandfather of mine who used to draw little images and pictures to keep his fellow soldiers entertained. So it's going to be quite personal for my family, and I'm really excited to bring my grandpa. I think that's something he's really going to like. So I'm really, really looking forward to seeing this. And I love history stuff and restoring history stuff, so I'm really excited about it.
And for me, it's personal as well. My grandfather, who passed in 2013, he was a World War II veteran, staff sergeant, Purple Heart and Bronze Star recipient.
Wow.
He was one of the main people that raised me, so it's very personal to me, and it would be tough for me to go and sit and watch this, I think, because one of the things he always said that he was most proud of was defending our country in World War II. He was in the Philippines, and he spoke often about it to me, but not to a lot of our family members. It was just kind of something between him and I. It was really difficult to get him to open up about a lot of things that he witnessed and did over there during World War II. It was always interesting to hear that history and kind of get that, because it's the people who lived it that pass on the history to us, that it's up to us to carry that torch now and continue the stories. So
absolutely,
I do want to check it out. I'll probably have to check it out with like a box of tissues or I'll bring his medals with me or something.
Right.
I don't know.
Nice. And I think a lot of people will have that experience as well. So it'll be interesting to see what other people have to say about it. People in my circle I'll have to talk to. So
if nothing else, also for They Shall Not Grow Old, it does open new opportunities for Peter Jackson, who has to recover from his blunder earlier in 2018/2019 with Mortal Engines. He's been approached now to take hours of unused footage from Let It Be, from the Beatles film, and restore it and give it the They Shall Not Grow Old treatment to direct a new film about the experience of the Beatles and the creation of the film Let It Be. Freya, are you a Beatles fan?
I am a Beatles fan, and I saw an article about that, and I'm really, really excited to see what he does with that. Again, I think that restoring old stuff is really cool, for like lack of a better term. It's really cool, but it is, and I'd be really interested to see how it turns out.
Number 9.
Moving on to the countdown now, we're up to number 9, and staying at number 9 this week is Escape Room from Sony, taking in $2.9 million, only a 29% drop from last week. The film only lost 250 screens, bringing its total screen count down to 1,942, just under $1,500 per screen average, as it brings its cume up to $52 million on a $9 million budget domestic, and is about to breach $100 million worldwide. So for a genre horror film on a $9 million budget, Sony's got to be pretty happy in seeing sequels in their eyes.
Oh, absolutely. This kind of film, horror stuff, it's interesting. As an actor, I love to be in horror movies, but I don't like to watch them. I'm such a scaredy cat. So I was seeing some of the trailers and some articles and such about this movie, and I was like, no, sorry, everyone, but I can't do it.
Now, as an actor yourself, do you go and watch the horror films that you are in?
I've done 2, and then I've done lots of creepy, scary plays and such. I watch them because I'm quite vain and I like to see if my performance was okay. But beyond that, I guess it's different because I know what the story is, and I know because I was in it that it's not real. And there's a part of my grown-up brain that also knows that this movie is not real, but then there's the rest of me that's like terrified. So I do watch myself, but I don't like it.
Do you still get scared by any jump scares in the films that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. 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 I can't even lie about that. I'm a big baby, a huge one.
You're listening to The Weekend Take. Visit our Patreon page to become a patron of The Weekend Take, and for as little as $1, you'll receive exclusive content and perks. Number 8.
Moving on to the countdown now, we're up to number 8, and this week, down from number 7, is A Dog's Way Home, also from Sony, taking in $3.5 million, a 31% drop from last week. The film only lost 119 screens, bringing its screen count down to 2,962. It had just under a $1,200 per screen average and has brought its cume up to $35.9 million in its fourth week of release. A Dog's Way Home from Sony is the latest in a trend of animal-led films where, as opposed to the previously used way of making the animals talk by moving their mouth, much like Dr. Dolittle, A Dog's Way Home uses the narration technique used by a number of other films, particularly from the same writer who also wrote A Dog's Purpose. But at its core, presents the same saccharine sweet family values and morals to the story and is a surefire win for both young children and dog owners everywhere. Freya, do you have pets of your own that
I do.
do they speak to you in such a way? I know I have made up, maybe I'm crazy or it's a sign of schizophrenia. I know I have conversations, so to speak, with my pets when I walk around the house and they're either in the way or looking at me, or I have 3 cats, they meow. I act like they're speaking, but in this case,
I have a dog, a little wiener dog who I adopted about 3 years ago. He came with the name Turtle. I did not name him that. So I have a dog named Turtle and I have a bearded dragon named Roxy, and they have 2 very different personalities. My bearded dragon is super sassy, and Turtle hates everything and will let you know about it. He's also so sweet. He's just very needy.
is this a film that speaks to you to want to check it out, being a pet owner, especially of a dog? Or
when I see movies like this, I wonder if they'll make me sad almost the whole time until the end. And also, I feel like I need to steal a child to bring with me to go see a movie like this, or people might give me a strange look. So if you have a child I can steal, then yes, I would love to go and see this movie.
Well, I have a 7-year-old daughter who wants to take me to see this movie, and I do not want to see this movie. So I feel like this is a great match to make.
Perfect.
So you can use her as the alibi to go see A Dog's Way Home, and then I don't have to.
I'll tell you all about it.
I mean, but for Sony, this being another, I would say, genre type film like Escape Room,
Wow.
It's a very calculated risk, as far as knowing what to expect its return to be. In this case, with Sony, they seem to be making some pretty good moves. Escape Room's proven to be very profitable. A Dog's Way Home also proven to be very profitable. So it shows that the formula works.
Yeah.
And that I'm sure we'll see whatever the next book in the series from this author, probably sometime next year around this time.
I believe it.
Number 7.
So moving on to the countdown, we are up to number 7. This week, down from number 4, is The Kid Who Would Be King from Fox, taking in $4.2 million, a 41% drop from last week. The Kid Who Would Be King actually picked up a couple of theaters despite its poor performance last weekend at its opening frame, gaining 7 theaters to bring its count up to 3,528 screens. It had a $1,200 per screen average and has brought its cume up to $13.1 million in its second week of release. Now, on Box Office Mojo, where the Weekend Take gets a lot of its information from, there isn't a budget reported, but I have looked it up, and The Kid Who Would Be King had a $59 million budget.
Okay.
So unfortunately for Fox, they're not in the same position that Sony is, whereas this film looks to lose them a fair amount of money. The question really is why this movie isn't doing as well as it should, and I feel like it's on Fox's fault for not promoting it and marketing it as well as they could have, because when you look at the numbers outside of what it's taking in for the box office, it's got an 87 on Rotten Tomatoes, which speaks pretty highly of the film, considering that that's a higher rating than The Green Book, which is an Academy Award nominated film.
Sure.
And it has a B+ on Cinema Score, which is polling audiences as they come out of the theater. So audience goers are liking the film, and even critics are liking the film. Trying to find out where to point the finger and where the fault lies, I think falls on Fox, or just falls on the fact that, as we spoke about last week on the show, the King Arthur intellectual property is an intellectual property that at this point has really just been done to death.
See, I love movies like this. And I think that, yes, okay, the King Arthur has been done to death, sure. But I think with any kind of story that has its roots in mythology or folklore, that it can be reinvented. And I think that's what they did here. And I love that it's kids. I love that it's kind of got that like Goonies feel to it. So I'm going to have to say it really falls on the marketing, because I didn't know about this film until like a couple of days before it was released. again, this is something that I want to take a kid to go with to see so I don't get any strange looks. But this is the kind of movie or TV series or whatever it could be within this genre that I really, really like. And I think that it's refreshing to see a story like this geared towards a younger audience, because everything, and not that it's bad, but everything nowadays is like, you know, comic books and that kind of action star hero kind of stuff. And I think that this still has elements of that, even though it's a little bit different. It's a little more like fantasy.
In the marketing I did see for the film, because I did see a trailer about 3 weeks before the film came out, the setup for it really made me feel reminiscent of another fantasy style film that is dear to my heart, and that's The Neverending Story.
Yeah, that's right.
Here you have this boy who's being bullied in The Kid Who Would Be King. He's trying to escape from them, and he finds himself in this demolition site for a building where he finds Excalibur, you know, the sword and the stone.
Right.
Whereas in The Neverending Story, Sebastian is running from the kids who are bullying him and finds himself stowed away in the attic of this house where he finds the book, and physically he runs from them, but mentally he goes to this distant land and has these adventures, even if in reading it through the eyes and the actions of Atreyu. So for me, like, that got me interested in seeing the film. It is something different. It is something that I'll still end up going to see with my daughter. This one I may volunteer to go in. So unless she really likes it and wants to see it for a repeat viewing, you may not be able to steal her away for this one, but
Guess I'll have to find someone else.
I guess so. But I do think it falls ultimately on Fox for dropping the ball with this. I mean, you would think you spend $59 million in putting this film together, that you wouldn't spend that little bit extra. And also to put it on this many screens.
Right.
3,528 screens. There's only 2 movies in the market right now that have more screens, and that's our number 1 and number 2 this week. Why not, if you're going to put it on that many screens, why not let the people know that this movie's coming out?
Exactly.
Number 6.
Moving on to the countdown now, we're up to number 6, and staying at number 6 this week is Green Book from Universal, taking in $4.3 million, only a 21% drop this week. It picked up a few more theaters, picking up 218 screens to bring its screen count up to 2,648. Had a per-screen average of just over $1,600 per screen, and it has brought its cume up to $55.8 million in its 12th week of release. Now, for Green Book, this film continues to be driven by award season success. This past week at the SAG Awards, Mahershala Ali wins for Best Supporting Actor. Heading into the Academy Awards, the film is nominated for a number of awards as well. So, I mean, this film is a little bit different fare than looking at the top 10 than all of it. I mean, at this point now in the top 10, it's the only thing that's more of a period piece, except for obviously They Shall Not Grow Old, but that's a documentary film, you know, being set in the 60s in the Deep South and dealing with a lot of thematic elements that rang true in the Deep South in the 60s and are kind of ringing true in a lot of places now in 2019.
Yep.
With Green Book, Freya, have you seen Green Book? You're a member of SAG as well, yes?
Yes, I am.
So as a member of SAG, were you privy to getting a SAG screener copy to check this film out?
It is sitting on my counter, yes. This is actually a movie that my boyfriend and I are going to watch later. Listen, January was a rough month for us professors just back at work. So I was like, oh no, I gotta talk about all these films that I haven't had the wonderful chance of seeing yet. But this is something that I can't wait to watch later because I really like movies that are steeped in some kind of reality as well. Like, I like the whole biography aspect of it, I guess, is what I'm really trying to say. And I like that, unfortunately, there are lots of themes, as you just said, that were very relevant in the 1960s and are still relevant today. So I'm sure while watching it later, I'll be able to go, oh, yes, that. Still dealing with that, aren't we? So this is something I am looking forward to watching, and I'll let you know how I feel about it when I'm done.
And with the increasing theater count, it just keeps trying to tell me that I have to go. I do want to see it, but I'm not a professor of any sort, but January does become a bit of a busy month and getting a lot of things going into 2019 for me professionally. It's been very difficult to see films that aren't kid fare because my daughter and I go to movies fairly often, but when I do get the chance to see serious movies, this is one of the top ones I want to see. I also still need to check out Bohemian Rhapsody and A Star is Born.
Ooh, what is wrong with us? Why are we like this?
I don't know. I mean, A Star is Born will be available to rent on iTunes in like 5 days, so I'll probably watch it that way. Same thing with Bohemian Rhapsody, so I feel like I'm going to end up watching both of these in the comfort of my own home, but at least something that is got a number of nominations I want to go see in theaters, because I know I can't go see Roma in theaters.
Nope.
I do have Netflix, so I guess I'll have to watch it that way. I do want to see Green Book. I really enjoy Viggo Mortensen's work, and I'm glad to see him back to form and like the way he was with A History of Violence and Eastern Promises, both really great films. And now to see him taking on this dramatic role and really excelling at it. I mean, here he is in the award season getting a number of nominations for himself, not always winning, unlike his co-star Mahershala Ali, but you know, it's an honor to be nominated, like the saying goes.
Yep, that's right. So we'll see.
You're listening to The Weekend Take. Visit our Patreon page to become a patron of The Weekend Take, and for as little as $1, you'll receive exclusive content and perks.
So now we're at the point in our program where we take a bit of an aside and get to know our guest a little bit more. This week, we have Freya Lind, who I mentioned is actor, director, and founder of the Midnight Film Festival with us. Freya, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Oh, God, this is like the worst, isn't it? No, I'm just kidding. I always say at the start of the first class of the semester, because I'm a film professor as well, I always tell the kids within the first 5 minutes, I go, all right, here, let's get the worst part out of the way, a little bit about myself. So that's where we are. So I went to school to be an actor. That is still my primary focus. I'm an actor, and I've been kind of transitioning into doing some voiceover work, which I think is really exciting. And I'm also a writer and a director as well. I think, Sean, you'll know that when you work in the performing arts or in entertainment, it's probably a good idea to learn how to do a bunch of different stuff and to do it well. So I kind of immersed myself after I got my master's in theater. I thought, well, it's interesting that I got a master's in theater when really most of what I'm doing is film. So maybe I should switch gears a little bit and focus on that. I did a couple of kind of experimental film projects, and I liked them so much. I thought, well, maybe I should write a short drama. And I had a play that I had written called Sunflower. The play was called The Last Dance, and then I rewrote it for film and I called it Sunflower Fields. And that was finished a couple of months ago, and now it's doing its festival round, and it's doing quite well. So I've got high hopes for it in the future as it continues to go along the circuit. That's what I've been doing in terms of being an actor, in terms of being a writer and a director. And I decided that because I didn't have this great community around me. I live in Rockland County, which is maybe about 40 minutes north of Manhattan. I thought, well, I'm really lacking this kind of sense of, I guess, creative filmmaking community, especially up here. So I thought, well, I've got enough fantastic contacts and friends and people who would want to help me create a film festival. I really value not just community, but also celebrating our own achievements and the achievements of others and celebrating art and creativity in general. And so I figured, let's make a film festival and let's screen some films and get everybody together. And so the Midnight Film Festival was born.
And it's not just the festival itself. You're also doing kind of like the 48-hour festival of...
That's right. So we're doing year-long programming. Our festival kicked off on January 12th. That was our first event. That was our big event. It went incredibly well. I was so surprised. I don't know why I was surprised. I shouldn't have been, because I worked really hard. But I guess, you know, whenever you do something for the first time, you cross your fingers and you hope, well, I just hope it happens. I met so many fantastic filmmakers, not just from all over the country, but from all over the world. And we decided that year-long programming was the way to go. And so the next thing that we're doing from February 8th to 10th is our 48-hour love and horror themed film challenge for Valentine's Day. So I've been telling my friends, if you've ever wanted to kill someone, now is the time. If you ever wanted to kill your significant other in film, now is your chance. And I actually have a special submission discount code for anyone listening. It's all caps, one word, weekend take, and you'll get 50% off your submission fee. You have to submit your team by the 7th on Film Freeway. And then we're doing a screening at the local NYC in Long Island City. It's a fantastic space on February 16th, and that's free and open to the public. Everybody can come and party and network with us and have some drinks and have a good time.
It sounds like a fantastic event. And so again, if you want to submit to Midnight Film Festival's 48-hour Love and Horror Fest, be sure to use the coupon code Weekend Take, all one word in capital letters. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, since it's a Love and Horror Fest, are you going to be able to watch the screeners, or have you delegated to a panel of others to watch the screeners?
I know. As soon as I made the event, I was like, what are you doing, Freya? Why are you doing this to yourself? But you know what it is? I love the like creepy horror films from like the 50s and the 60s. And I love the really old stuff. And so when I made my flyer, I made it look like that. And I'm hoping that that's what people do instead of like, it won't be, but that's what I'm hoping for. I have a team of people. Yes, I've got a panel of judges. I have my fantastic friend Tamara, who is a producer and a digital content creator. And I've got Rocco, who is a marketing manager for Sony. So fun fact, we're also taking music videos. They just have to follow all the same rules as the film submission. So I will obviously make final decisions, but I trust my team to look at all the scary movies that come in.
For me, it was a pleasant surprise because you and I first met was working together on Growing Up Fat and Albanian, which is a comedy about dysfunctional family. That's right. Where you were acting in that as one of the leads. And it's been just a wonderful surprise as we've gotten to know each other over these now 2.5 years since the film.
Yeah.
Just to see that you have all these talents and not just a jack of all trades, but you're very good at all the boxes you're checking off.
That's really nice of you to say. Sometimes I question myself.
Now, looking ahead, you said a year-long programming. Do you have an inkling of what the next 48-hour challenge or next event of the Midnight Film Festival is going to be?
I have a couple of ideas in mind. I think that we will do a handful of 48-hour film challenges, different themes. I'd like to do themes kind of depending on the season because I think that helps people kind of get in the mood of things. But also we're going to be having different kinds of networking parties, and I'm going to be doing a couple of panels with people in the industry. And also because we have this wonderful component of our judge and collaborator Rocco working in the music industry for so long, we really want to kind of do events that merge both worlds. Because when him and I had a conversation, I said, we really need each other. We don't always remember that, but artists need filmmakers and editors and animators, and we need the artists. We need people to be a part of our projects as well. And we also need music, right? We need that too. So it would be really nice to bring different aspects of the entertainment industry together for events. So that's kind of where my focus is. And then as we talked earlier, a lot of my favorite stuff is anime, but also animation as well. And I'm actually working on an animated film right now. And I'd really like to bring animation more heavily into the fold. So we'll see. I've got a couple of ideas brewing around in my brain. And when I know, everyone else will know too.
As an actor yourself, you've acted for screen and you've acted for stage, I imagine, yes?
Yes.
What's the best advice someone's given you?
Actors are three things: an athlete, a prostitute, and a Buddhist monk. Yep. That is the best piece of advice that I was ever given. You have to be an athlete. It's not so much about physical fitness, but you've got to be healthy and you've got to take care of yourself, and you can't be out, drink until 3 a.m. and then expect to be on set at 6 a.m. It's just not going to happen. You got to be a Buddhist monk. You're not going to get every audition or opportunity you go in for. I guess this spans not just for actors, but for people in general. And you got to be a prostitute. If a job comes your way and you want it, you better go get it. You better take it. Better work for the money, honey. That's it.
Being a woman in film, as both an actor and writer director, how do you take in the way the landscape has shifted the way that it has, primarily over the last 2 to 3 years? Like how do you reflect on seeing the rise in prominent females in the industry moving themselves to the forefront? How do you relay that into what you do moving forward in your career?
So I think I'm very lucky that my career shifted so much within this same time period, 2 to 3 years. And so as I was making this transition into film and being a director and producing my own work, all of these other women were stepping forward and saying, sorry, we're not going to take the crap anymore. Before that time, I was basically just working as an actor. I had done some modeling stuff as well. I've been on auditions where things are very uncomfortable. I've been in casting rooms where all the red flags are coming up. At that time, I felt very much like I was not in any kind of position of power. At that time, it was, all right, well, if they give you a job, just do whatever they say. Just do whatever they say. If you're on set and they tell you to do this and it makes you uncomfortable, it doesn't matter. Just do it because you need the job. You need the job as an actor. And that's a terrible way of thinking. And I didn't realize that so many other people thought the same way until these women started stepping forward and speaking up. And I'm really glad that they did. I think they're heroes. I really do. Because you're afraid that, okay, well, maybe I'll lose all of these opportunities that I've just begun building for myself if I speak up. And so I got very lucky in that respect. I think it's incredibly empowering, not just for myself, but for other female filmmakers that I know. And I think it really encourages me to continue to pursue what I'm passionate about and to not take no for an answer. When I first started in film writing and directing, and I was definitely not confident in my ability to do so. I thought, well, who am I? I've never done this before. Why would anyone take me seriously? All of the things you tell yourself, right? And I did a couple of things and they got into a couple of festivals and I was pleased with them. And I thought, okay, all right, well, maybe we can learn more and keep going. And I think the trick is to keep learning and to trust your instincts. And I think that's really what I'm going to take with me as I move forward, is not to take no for an answer, not to distrust myself, and to know that it doesn't matter if I'm a woman. I can be in this, I guess you could call it a position of power, whatever you really want to call it, and have my voice heard, and that it should be heard, and that I have a story to tell, and my stories are just as good as anybody else's.
Very well put. And do you yourself have a favorite female director?
Can I say myself?
You absolutely can.
I'm giving myself a confidence boost. So I'm going to say me. I'm my favorite. There we go.
All right. Well, then you are the one to watch in 2019 then.
Oh, boy. Now the pressure's on now.
Well, Freya, I do want to thank you for taking the time to tell us a bit more about yourself and what you do. And just real quick, let the listeners know where can they go to learn more about you and the Midnight Film Festival, and maybe give us some of the social media handles that you use for either yourself or for Midnight Film Fest.
Absolutely. So on Instagram, you can find me at Freya_actor. I'm sure my name will be written somewhere, so you'll know how to spell it. For Midnight Films, it's Midnight Films NY. You can find us on Twitter with those handles as well. And I have a Freya Titlin actor page on Facebook and a Midnight Films page on Facebook as well. So you can go there. You can shoot me a message, say hello. We're pretty accessible that way.
And any websites you want to direct people to?
If you are going to sign up for our 48-hour film challenge, you can find our page on Film Freeway. If you just look for the Midnight Film Festival, you'll find it right there. You'll see all the rules and the requirements and what you have to do to submit. For those who are listening and don't know, Film Freeway is free. You can make a page and then you'll just create a new submission, give it a team name, and submit to us. And I'm like really excited for the challenge. So I hope that people sign up and participate, have some fun.
And don't forget, for those of you that are listening that do want to participate, you can use the coupon code Weekend Take, all capital letters and one word, and you'll receive 50% off the submission entry fee.
That's correct.
Well, Freya, thank you again, and we're going to get back into the countdown so we can get more of your insights on the films. But please do, everyone, check out the social media handles and the Midnight Film Festival and Freya's work as well.
Number 5.
So moving on to the countdown now, we're up to number 5, and staying at number 5 this week is Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse from Sony, taking in $4.4 million, only a 27.8% drop from last week. The film lost a small number of screens, losing 149 screens to bring its screen count down to 2,234. The film is still averaging just under $2,000 per screen and has brought its cume up to $175.2 million in its 8th week of release. Now, with Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse, Sony has on their hands an Academy Award nominee, Spider-Man, of course, being nominated for Best Animated Film. But I think more so than that, the film has staying power because of the quality of the film. It has good characters, good script, and aesthetically is something unlike most anything that's in the countdown or anything that we've seen for some time. Freya, with Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse, have you seen this film? And with its interesting animation style, I know you said that you're a film of not just anime, but animation in general. What does Spider-Man bring to the table that, to me, feels different from most everything else that has come out recently?
What I think this film brings to audiences is more diversity as well, and a different kind of storyline that I think is really interesting for viewers. And I think what's great about this is that they have these kinds of characters that are like crossing different dimensions and such, and having to work together. And I also like that it's set in New York.
But not only that, but you get to see New York in a bunch of different lights because I've seen the film. And so during the film, when the dimensions start crossing over, you see the similarities and differences of the different multiverses version of New York City. So that's
cool.
Yeah. And one of the other things that a lot of moviegoers are enjoying as a breath of fresh air about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is Sony has deliberately made it where this Spider-Man is not part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is a Marvel property that Sony's putting a movie out for, much like they put out Venom last year as well. Both of those films, while Marvel properties, are not part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe proper. So you get to go into this movie and not have to worry about, well, did I see Avengers Infinity War? Did I see Spider-Man Homecoming and all these titles before? This is a complete breakaway from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it lives on its own. And not only will it live on its own, but it's going to move forward with its own universe, its own Spiderverse, as we explore the other dimensions Spider-Man stories, which, by the way, includes Penny Parker, a heavily anime-based Spider-Man story. I don't know if you're aware of that.
No, that's going to be amazing.
So in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is Penny Parker, who's a young girl whose father passed, and she put the consciousness into a mecha that she pilots, and she uses the spider in the mecha to give her the superpowers. And it's all anime living within this other stylistic way of animation in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So not only is it multi-dimensions, but it's multiple varieties of animation living in this one movie.
Yeah, I really like that. I feel sometimes if I get behind on a Marvel film that I'm like, oh no, can I go and watch this if I haven't seen this, and the next thing? So I think that's really great for a lot of people who maybe haven't seen some of the films and they just want to go and enjoy themselves.
Well, I think what's also great about it is its curse and its blessing is that it looks different from other comic book movies out now, but that everybody sitting in the theater can find something to entertain them about the film. Now, I say it's a curse and a blessing because the curse part of it is its performance, while very good, is not living up to its live action counterparts. And I think because a lot of people at first glance look at this film as an animated film geared towards children. And so I feel like that probably fractured the audience that was going to go see it a little bit, but they're really missing out. Those people who think, oh, it's an animated film, it's for kids, really missing out on this because it's a great film.
You're listening to The Weekend Take. Visit our Patreon page to become a patron of The Weekend Take, and for as little as $1, you'll receive exclusive content and perks. Number 4.
Moving on to the countdown now, we're up to number 4. Down from number 3 this week is Aquaman from Warner Brothers. Aquaman took in just under $4.8 million, a 34% drop from last week. It lost a small amount of theaters, losing 208 screens to bring its screen count down to 2,926. The film averaged just over $1,600 per screen and has brought its cume up to $323.5 million domestic and crosses the 1.1 billion mark worldwide. You know, I've spoken about Aquaman a few times over the last few weeks on my opinion on it. I feel like Aquaman is Marvel light. I feel like with Aquaman, they took Marvel's formula and they applied it to their own films, which is a departure from previous DC fare. I mean, you look at Batman v Superman, you look at Justice League, even looking ahead to announced 2021 release of The Batman, which now is Ben Affleck less.
Yes, I saw that.
Now we need a new Batman. So with Aquaman, it's tough because you've set up this feeling in audiences of what a DC film should be, and they're going to carry it through because Shazam, as you know, is coming out in March, will kind of have the same kind of lighthearted feel. But looking beyond that, it's tough for them to kind of keep pace with this and keep this up. I've already spoken enough on the topic of Aquaman and my opinions on it over the last few weeks. Freya, looking at Aquaman, is this something that had interested you, or?
Yes, not just because of who's playing Aquaman, although that doesn't hurt. What I really thought was interesting was who the director was. You know, from Saw and The Conjuring to Aquaman. I thought that was really fascinating. And so I definitely was interested in seeing this film and also seeing Jason Momoa. Did I mention Jason Momoa? I'm not sure if I did 4 times, you know.
You know, you mentioned him a couple of times, but I mean,
who, Jason Momoa?
yes, Jason Momoa. What you're saying is you want to be looking at what Jason Momoa has for roles coming up and looking at those casting directors.
Oh yes, that would be a smart plan for me.
Looking at that whole being the Buddhist monk, the prostitute, the athlete,
right?
Like the prostitute part of it, it's like, you know, I'd be damsel in distress number 3, sure.
That's right. I don't even need a name. I could be uncredited.
And talking about the director, you're looking at James Wan. I mean, he cut his teeth in horror. I mean, he directed the original Saw and went on to produce and write much more of the franchise. But he does have a bit of action background. I mean, he did direct Furious 7.
Right.
So he's got some action background, and some of that you can see in Aquaman and a lot of the action sequences and a lot of the humor and the way that they approach and that kind of antagonist-protagonist dichotomy.
See that James Wan was already announced as the director for Aquaman 2. So there is another one coming, everybody.
It will be interesting to see how interwoven DC makes their universe. Because I think if they learned anything from the Justice League is that without the proper build-up, you can't just throw everybody into a pot, mix it up, and expect audiences to want to see it. Because, yeah, sure, it had the Flash in it, and you know, and Wonder Woman and Aquaman and Superman and Batman and all this going on, but Flash was never really established. I mean, outside of their television product.
Yes.
You just can't throw everybody into a pot, all these heroes, and expect audiences to show up. Yes, there were people who really loved Wonder Woman. There were people who were still kind of upset over Batman v Superman. And then there were people who saw Suicide Squad and wondered what the hell DC was thinking. They hadn't really established enough of a positive track record heading into Justice League to throw everybody into one movie. I'll be interested to see if DC moving forward is just like, you know what? We can't do that yet. Like Aquaman's going to go off on his stories and Wonder Woman's going to go off on her stories.
Right.
You know, and so's Batman and Shazam. And maybe when we've built enough of a track record, we'll revisit Justice League. But I think they wanted to do everything that Marvel did in 12 years in 2.
Yeah, not a good plan.
Number 3.
Moving up in the countdown now, we're up to number 3, our other new entry of the week, Miss Bala from Sony, taking in $6.7 million on just over 2,200 screens. The film averaged $3,000 per screen. It had a bit of a lukewarm opening. I mean, $3,000 per screen is about average. I mean, it didn't catch fire right out of the gate. I think part of that has to do with its lead. I mean, Gina Rodriguez, while a good actress, is mostly known from Jane the Virgin.
Right.
So saying, hey, she's going to be an ass kicker in an action movie.
Right.
It's tough. Like, it's one thing when an actor makes a left turn and does something completely unexpected and it works, but this is a drastic left turn. I mean, you're going from a streaming series comedy to gun-toting ass kicker. My first blush reaction to Miss Bala was, wait, Jane the Virgin is shooting that guy? What happened?
Yeah, that was kind of the first reaction that I had as well. I was surprised, definitely. And my next thought was, well, okay. I guess as an actor, I'm thinking I wouldn't want to be put into a box, but once you're in the box, it's quite difficult to climb out of it. So it's really great that she's being given this opportunity. And I think she's doing Carmen Sandiego also. It's really interesting. And I agree that it might be because of Gina Rodriguez. And so I think that as more people go to see the film and they'll hear from their friends if they liked it and contacts and this and that they'll go out and see it.
One thing of note, and you and I talked about this before the show came on, is the idea of female directors, and Catherine Hardwicke, who most people know directing in the Twilight series. Catherine is the only female director in our top 10 this week, which is a bit surprising.
We say surprising, but it was funny as I was writing out the list. I didn't blink an eye at it until I went back over it and I went, okay. And I guess it is interesting that there is only one female director in the top 10, but it wasn't my first thought, which is not great. There should definitely be more female directors and directors of color as well in this list, but there are not at the moment. And hopefully that will begin to change.
One of the things that surprised me for Sony was the kind of box they put around this film in its marketing. I only saw promotional material for Miss Bala around other product that was directed towards a Hispanic audience. And the 2 trailers I saw for Miss Bala were in Spanish, which surprises me because when you have someone like Gina Rodriguez,
right,
who is the lead in Jane the Virgin, a successful episodic show for a streaming service that has fans across all demographics, why put your film in that box from a marketing standpoint? And yes, I get it that it's a remake of a 2011 action film of the same title from Mexico, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to check all the same boxes you did for the original release.
Agreed. I completely agree.
The film itself is getting poor marks. I mean, it's got a 27% on Rotten Tomatoes, but in the reviews I have read about the film, the person who's going to come out the most smelling like roses from this is Gina Rodriguez, because most all the reviews I've read say Gina Rodriguez is an action star just in a bad film.
Okay. Well, good for her then.
I almost think that maybe the Carmen Sandiego property should have found its way out prior to Miss Bala, because at least that's a bit of a transition to this, but that wasn't the case. So now I'll be curious to see, looking at Carmen Sandiego, how that film performs. But I mean, that will have the added benefit of a known intellectual property that now for a new generation has a whole new animated series that just premiered on Netflix as well.
No, how exciting.
I just hope they bring back the game show. I liked the game show, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. I thought that was great. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see, looking at the weeks ahead, how Miss Bala performs through word of mouth in the weekends ahead. Before we get into our number 1 and number 2 entries, we're in the midst of awards season, but that also means we're in the midst of Sundance season. Now, Sundance has recently wrapped up. The award winners were announced. These films, Sundance is typically the proving grounds for films that will make an impact moving into 2019, and the people who will make an impact moving into 2019. Looking at the Sundance competition, the grand jury prize this year went to Clemency, which Looking at IMDb, the synopsis is listed as years of carrying out death row executions have taken a toll on prison warden Bernadine Williams. As she prepares to execute another inmate, Bernadine must confront the psychological and emotional demons her job creates, ultimately connecting her to the man she is sanctioned to kill. And in touching upon one of the topics we discussed earlier when we discussed Catherine Hardwicke being the only female director in the top 10, Clemency, which took home the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance, has a female director in Chinyonye Chukwu, which I apologize to the listeners out there if I mispronounced that. If someone would like to educate me on the proper way to pronounce it, please feel free to reach out. You look also at the special jury award that was given for Vision and Craft, which was awarded to Alma Harel, another female director seemingly on the rise. Now, Honey Boy had a lot of buzz around it as well, just because of Shia LaBeouf's return to prominence. In this case, he's acting in the film and penned the script for it, and it's somewhat semi-autobiographical. But one of the things that came away from Sundance was at the acceptance speech, Alma Harel said, and I quote, "I'm really proud to be here in a year when 44% of the directors are women. We're here, we're ready, stop sending us to shadow fucking white men." That's great. I mean, that's just a declaration at the podium accepting this at Sundance, arguably the biggest film festival in the world, perhaps next to Cannes, and just making your mark. I'm glad that, Honey Boy got picked up, and so I'll be excited to see when it makes its theatrical premiere later this year to check out Alma's work.
Agree.
So now Sundance has come, it's gone. The films are signing the deals, the ink's drying on the contracts. What particular takeaways did you take from Sundance, or films from Sundance that you are particularly looking forward to, Freya?
Sure. So I like when you were talking about the quote earlier saying that 44% of the directors there were women. I think that that's something I'm looking forward to seeing over the next year, because again, when we looked at our list for this weekend, there was only one female director, and now we're seeing 44% of the directors at Sundance are women. So I'll be really interested to see how over the next course of the year, the films that you'll be talking about for the weekend will change and who they'll be directed by.
Stemming off of our conversation earlier, that means Sundance 2020 will be discussing Freya Titland, yes?
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
I do agree that this shift has been for the positive over the last 2 or 3 years, because I think the female directors were a very underrepresented community, and now to see at Sundance again, to see that 44% of the entries and the films in consideration for the awards are helmed by female directors is certainly a shift for the better.
I agree.
So of the films that I mentioned, is there one that stands out to you?
I really want to see Honey Boy because I am obsessed with Shia LaBeouf. Like, I was very upset that time that he was going live in front of a museum or wherever it was, and I wasn't there to meet him and tell him I love him. So I'm just for that reason alone, I really want to see Honey Boy. I think that Shia LaBeouf is one of those people who is brilliant, and it just, with anything, took a little time to work all that stuff out, and I really appreciate him. So I'd like to see something that's a bit autobiographical from him.
Yeah, it does remind me a little bit of the ebb and flow that someone like Joaquin Phoenix went through, because there was a time period where Joaquin Phoenix was a bit of a crazy man himself and a recluse, and to see him now work through it all, and now he's back to being, Joaquin Phoenix. I'm hoping that the same results for Shia LaBeouf, because I want to see him return to prominence and not be to what some people made him out to be, which was kind of like not necessarily a running joke, but like a fodder for memes and stuff like that. Like,
absolutely.
He doesn't deserve that, because he is talented, despite making what I feel is probably the worst Indiana Jones movie in the franchise.
I know.
He deserves better. He is a talented individual.
You're listening to The Weekend Take. Visit our Patreon page to become a patron of The Weekend Take, and for as little as $1, you'll receive exclusive content and perks. Number 2.
So moving on now in our countdown, we are up to number 2, and this week, staying at number 2 is The Upside from STX Entertainment, taking in $8.8 million, only a 26% drop from last week. The film picked up a few more theaters now, adding 191 screens to bring its screen total up to 3,568. The film still doing great, averaging just under $2,500 per screen, and has brought its cume up to $75.5 million in its fourth week of release. Now, to see a film in its fourth week of release that isn't heavily touted during the awards season with a bunch of nominations and such, continuing to gain theaters, have marginal drops weekend to weekend, I think speaks a lot to the quality of the film and how audiences are receiving it, because critics aren't receiving it any better over 4 weeks. They haven't warmed up to it. Still only has a 39% on Rotten Tomatoes, but it does have an A on CinemaScore, so audiences are liking it and speaking with the dollars they're putting into it. And I mentioned this last week, this film just really seems to be made of Teflon because nothing seems to stick to it. I mean, here you've got Kevin Hart, right before the film comes out, has to step down from the Academy Awards because of past Twitter transgressions. Bryan Cranston, the week the film comes out, seemingly has to defend himself for playing a quadriplegic character when he's not actually quadriplegic. Mm-hmm. The film had been delayed over a year. It was supposed to come out in 2017, and the last company to hold it before STX was the Weinstein Group, which went bankrupt, and STX picked up the property for them. So with all these bad juju that should be around the film, it doesn't seem to affect it at all. How do you feel about all the complaint politics that surrounded another actor's performance and the fact that he wasn't fitting the role in terms of a physical handicap? Like, what does that say to you as an actor?
I think they could have found someone else. This argument happens all of the time, you know, whether it's whitewashing or it's straight people playing the roles of queer people. Here we are with Bryan Cranston playing someone who is a quadriplegic. It is not that difficult to find actors that can represent themselves or represent a certain kind of person or people. Do I think that Bryan Cranston is a great actor? Yeah, I do. But I also think they could have found somebody else. I mean, I can't speak to what their casting process was like. I don't know if they interviewed 200 people who happened to be quadriplegic to see if they could play the role, and then they just didn't find anyone. But something like that is just kind of hard to believe that they couldn't find anyone. I don't know about that.
Looking at it from the studio's point of view, it's tough to say, but being that they are a business and they're investing $37.5 million, you obviously want to do what you can to get the most return on investment. And if, for instance, Bryan Cranston came to them, read the script and said, I want to do this, as a studio, it's going to be tough to say, no, I'm sorry, Bryan, we want to find someone who better represents this role.
You just said it. I mean, I understand what you're saying. Yes, they do need to make a profit, but you know, I think there are other ways to do that. You keep an actor like Kevin Hart, who lots of people love and enjoy, and there's your star value. You have Nicole Kidman as star value as well. It's possible to do, and especially I believe it's possible to do in these big studios because they can fill up star power in other places and still get the funding and the audience that they're looking for.
Maybe if they didn't go with Bryan Cranston, maybe the film doesn't have a $37.5 million budget. Maybe it doesn't need to be that.
Maybe.
It's not like there's big action sequences. I mean, you look just before this at Miss Bala, which is an action film, cost $15 million. So what exactly happens in the upside where the budget needs to be more than double when it's an intimately told small ensemble dramedy? Where did you spend $37.5 million? I'm not quite sure. Could you have made it for less? And if you could have made it for less, should you have done your due diligence in trying to find talent that better represented the specifications of the role as laid out in the script? When you go out to audition, do you see certain listings on casting calls, but it's a position and a role that you really want? And do you try to send your information anyway? Because
I don't send my information anyway, because then I look stupid. Like if the casting director is calling for something very specific and I'm like, well, you know what? It's something that I know that I can play or that I really want to. That's not what they're looking for. So it doesn't matter that I want to play it. And then if I submit myself to enough roles where I don't fit that particular role, then I just look like I'm an actor who doesn't know my brand, which means I'm probably not set ready, which means they don't want to take a chance on me. So I do my best not to look like an idiot. It's hard, but I try.
I mean, I try every day and I fail most days, but I do appreciate the way you put that because I never really thought of it like that. Because being the Buddhist monk, you could feel that you could play all these parts, but if that's not what they're looking for, you have to look beyond that at what the consequences and the ramifications are of it.
I want Indiana Jones more than anyone in the entire world. I want to be an action star, but the way I look right now and what my type is, I will not do that. And if I constantly waste my time and my energy going after something I'm not right for, then I've wasted a lot of time and energy, but I'm also wasting the time of someone else who's trying to do their job.
Yeah, so I can see what you're saying. Like if you start misrepresenting your brand as an actor, that word will kind of spread amongst the network of the casting directors. So yeah, I can completely see that.
But I do see casting calls looking for very specific things all of the time. So they know that different kinds of actors are out there. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, it does come down to money, money, money.
And since it does come down to money, because it's making a lot of money and has a lot of staying power in the box office, what is STX doing that is either different or right that other studios should try to replicate or figure out for their own projects? I mean, is it anything, or is this just the upside wins the lottery and it's the film that gets to do the best at the box office?
Well, I don't know exactly. From what I do know about this film, even though it's not something that I'm necessarily interested in seeing, I can see that it's one of those heartwarming kind of stories. And they do have a cast of actors that people are very interested in seeing. And I think those kinds of combinations with a nice, good story can really touch people. And it's a little bit different than what we're used to seeing. You know, we were talking before about the comic book stuff and these like action films and that kind of thing. And this is a little bit different. And so maybe it's refreshing for audiences.
That could be it. I mean, the upside just continues to perform well. It's adding theaters. It's doing something that typically during this time of year, only a film that has garnered a number of nominations or award wins does. So, I mean, bravo to STX. I mean, 4 weeks ago in its opening weekend, the upside was number one. It's STX's first number one at the box office. So it just speaks well to STX's choice in product. And moving forward, we'll see what else comes from STX.
Number 1.
So now we're here. We're at our number 1 for the weekend. And for the third weekend in a row, it's Glass from Universal. Glass took in $9.5 million, a 49.5% drop from last week. Glass lost a few theaters, losing 179 screens, bringing its screen total down to 3,665 screens, still the highest count of any of the movies in the countdown. It averaged $2,600 per screen and has brought its cume up to $88.6 million in its third week of release. Traditionally, the Super Bowl weekend is a very slow weekend at the box office, so no surprise that they weren't pushing out any mega blockbusters to rival Glass, and that Glass would take number 1 for the third weekend in a row. But I think part of Glass's holding on to number 1 does have to do with its word of mouth and its own staying power as a film. I mean, yes, a 50% drop is more than everything else in the top 10 or even just outside the top 10 with the exception of Serenity, but it's another one of those films I think everybody who wanted to see the film saw it these first 2 weeks, and you know, now it's just the people who wanted to go to see it without so many people in the theater going to see it.
That's me.
Typically, that's me as well. The only thing I go opening weekend to see are Star Wars films, which is the epitome of jam-packed theaters and lines and stuff, but I have to go see it. So with Glass, as I was talking about last week, is, again, a return to prominence for M. Night Shyamalan, who now has 3 films in a row that he's put out that have all been, you know, hits. You had The Visit, and then Split 2 years ago, which was a huge hit, and now Glass, which is a continuation of Split and the Unbreakable storylines. You know, but looking at M. Night Shyamalan as a director and all of his works, Glass is still landing about middle of the pack. So I think the days of mega blockbuster hits for M. Night are over, but I think the time period of profitable, decent fare without really bad plot twists, he's kind of returned to prominence and he's kind of fallen right into the groove of what works for him. Now, those last 3 films that were all successes were also all funded by Shyamalan himself and then distributed by Universal. So Shyamalan's kind of turned this into his own vehicle to continue to make projects that are personal to him.
Yeah.
Because you're looking at his body of work, there's only one film that he's directed that he also didn't write, which was After Earth. Now, I don't know if that is a hindrance or a benefit to him because there's no collaboration if the only collaboration is what's going on in your mind.
Right.
But given Glass and Split deal with people with multiple personalities, maybe Shyamalan's got a little bit of that going on himself, but who knows? With Glass, Freya, did you see Unbreakable? Did you see Split? Are you going to see Glass?
I saw those and I'm going to see Glass. Like we just said, I'm the person that likes to wait a little bit so I can stretch my legs out. It was funny because I was talking to someone about this and they were like, well, didn't that get a ton of bad reviews? And I was like, so what? You know, I'd like to make a determination on my own. And I also love the actors that are in it. I'm like a huge Bruce Willis fan. Die Hard is a Christmas movie, okay?
It is. You're right, it is.
I'm a huge fan. I am going to see this, and especially now that the semester has settled in, I can see movies all of the time now and not feel like I'm going crazy. Actually, the very first film that I ever saw by him was Lady in the Water, and that's what it's called, right? I think so.
Yeah, The Lady in the Water, which is tough because that was right on the cusp of people getting off the bandwagon for Shyamalan. So, like the line from Fight Club, you met him at a very weird time.
I did, but that was the first film that I saw of his, and that stuff is like right up my alley. I remember watching it and thinking, this is a little weird, but I don't hate it. And so I wonder if that's the same kind of experience I'm gonna have when I go see Glass, if I'm gonna say this is a little weird but I don't hate it. So we'll see.
Looking at Glass, I think this is its last weekend sitting atop the box office. Next weekend, there are 4 wide releases coming out, all of which are going to probably outshine Glass. So Glass it'll drop down the charts, but I think Glass is successful overall. It made a profit. It definitely lets Shyamalan continue making these projects that are personal to him. You know, you mentioned your friends saying, well, it's got bad reviews. Well, yeah, it does. I mean, it's got a 36 on Rotten Tomatoes, but it's got a B on CinemaScore. So audiences are at least receptive to it. And that's the people that really matter. I mean, because when I want to know if a movie's good or not, I don't look at critic reviews. I talk to people.
Exactly.
Here it is. We're here. We're Super Bowl Sunday. We're hours away from kickoff. And by the time the episode airs, the Super Bowl will be done and over with. But Freya, do you have a pick for tonight's big game?
No, I'm more interested about the Puppy Bowl. I'm like, I used to really be into the Super Bowl and all that stuff because I always liked the parties and all of that. But no.
And the commercials. Don't forget the commercials.
Well, the commercials I'm looking forward to, but I'm really looking forward to the Puppy Bowl.
Okay. So looking ahead to next week when the Super Bowl is over and the world champion's been crowned, but more importantly, the Puppy Bowl has ended and a winner has been declared. We have 4 wide releases coming out. The first of which is Cold Pursuit from Lionsgate, opening on just about 2,500 screens, anticipated. The action drama, which seemingly puts Liam Neeson in some other role where he used to do something, but he doesn't, and then something drags him back into it, and now he goes around and he kicks everybody's asses. That's coming next week. Liam Neeson himself said that Cold Pursuit is probably his last foray into the action genre, because he's even said himself, he's like, I'm 63 years old. Who's really going to believe I'm going to go around kicking people's asses anymore?
Good. Nice.
Also coming out next week, we have The Prodigy from Orion Pictures, a horror film, which I know Freya will not be in attendance for. Also next week, what I feel is going to be number 1 by a landslide is the Lego Movie 2, the second part from Warner Brothers, opening on over 4,100 screens. That film is one that, I get to say, oh no, I'm only going to see it because my daughter wants to see it. No, it's a lie. I want to go see this too. So I'm going to go check that out because everything is still awesome. And the last of our wide releases for next week is What Men Want from Paramount, a remake of the 2001 Mel Gibson film, opening on just over 2,800 screens, starring Taraji Henson, who most people know from films like Proud Mary, Hidden Figures, No Good Deed, and has done a number of the Tyler Perry properties as well. So looking ahead to next week, Freya, I mean, I feel like you'll agree that Lego Movie likely going to be number one.
Oh, most definitely. And again, not just for kids, but for grown kids too.
Exactly. Now, looking at the other three releases, do you see either of them either doing better than people think, or are any of these you're looking at and like, this is going to bomb?
People love Taraji Henson, so I know that they'll go out and see that. I love her too. I think she's great and super funny. I want to say that because this is 2019 and we've got meme culture, unfortunately, that the Liam Neeson film, his stuff a lot of it has turned into like memes on the internet. And so I think a lot of people will go out just to see him kick some ass as well. So I'd be interested to see how well that one does, though.
Cold Pursuit, I agree. I see it probably performing about on pace with some of the more recent Liam Neeson vehicles like The Commuter, and he's certainly far removed from the success of Taken in the genre, but I think, it'll be enough for them to try and lure him back into the genre again after this film.
You're right. And he'll have a hard no.
I think when you get to be someone like Liam Neeson,
yeah, he
can sit at home and say no. It's like, no, go make me a Qui-Gon Jinn origin film.
Hey, that would be great.
I'd watch it. I feel like with The Prodigy, because it's another horror genre film, but I think The Prodigy comes just long enough after Escape Room to fill that need for people who are fans of the horror genre. So I imagine I'll see that performing fairly well next week. I think What Men Want will steal a bit of the Upside's thunder in terms of comedy. So just before we sign off, one more time, Freya, just kind of give us the info on where we can check out what you're doing in the Midnight Film Festival.
Sure. So you can find us on all the social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, by looking for Midnight Films or Midnight Films NY. If you go on Film Freeway and you look for the Midnight Film Festival, you will find our 48-hour film challenge. We hope you'll check us out there and submit a team. It'll be a lot of fun. And if you just want to find me, the best place is Instagram at FreyaTitlin_actor, and we can connect there.
And the Weekend Take is on social media as well. We're on Twitter at Weekend Take. We're also on Facebook as well. And please do check out our Patreon page. It's the contributions of our Patreon patrons that help keep the Weekend Take running. Patreon patrons get early exclusive access to extended cuts of the episode, so you'll get to hear more of what Freya and I had to talk about this week. But that just about wraps it up for us here at the Weekend Take. So again, I want to thank Freya for coming on and being our guest host this week.
Thanks for having me.
All right, well, that wraps it up for us. I hope everyone enjoyed the show, and we will see everyone next week. Take care.
You've been listening to The Weekend Take. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Google Play, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Visit our Patreon page to become a patron of The Weekend Take, and for as little as $1, you'll receive exclusive content and perks.